Welcome back to Learn Academic English. I'm Jenna, and in today's lesson, I'm going to teach you all about the word especially. Especially is a super common word that we use both in writing and especially in speaking. So it's a really important word for you to know how to use. Before we get into that, I'd like to remind you to please give this video a like, leave a comment where you can practice with me in the comments below, and subscribe if you want more lessons like this one. So first, let's talk about how to pronounce the word especially. Especially has stress on the second syllable, so you're going to say especially, especially. Make sure that that CI sounds like a sh, especially. What does especially mean? Well, especially is an adverb, and that means that it can be used in different places in the sentence, and we'll look at that in a little bit. But especially means that it's to emphasize that something is more important or that something happens more often than others. You can think of it similar to more than usual. How about some synonyms of especially? Well, two synonyms are particularly and in particular, but we don't use those words as often, especially in speaking. Particularly and in particular are harder to pronounce, and they're also a lot more formal. So we use those words more in writing. So let's look at a few examples, and I'll talk about where we can put especially in the sentence. Number one, I don't like hot weather, especially when it's humid. Okay, so here we have hot weather, and then we're going to focus on, or we're going to emphasize when it's humid. So that means that I really don't like humid weather more than just hot weather in general. And we can use especially after the comma before a clause. Next, I prefer healthy food, especially salads. Okay, here again we have a larger group, healthy food, but then we want to emphasize one of those things, which is salads. So again, we would have the noun and then a comma and then especially and the example that I want to emphasize. I like all kinds of foods, but I especially like salads and fresh fruit. Okay, here we're going to put especially in between the subject and a verb, which is a very common place for this word. And as you know, a lot of adverbs go in between the subject and the verb. Another one, this equipment is used especially for research. So here especially means maybe more similar to for a particular purpose, and it's to emphasize that it's for that purpose, for research. But we'll look more at how to use especially in a sentence in a moment. However, it is important to note that we don't use especially at the beginning of a sentence before the subject. So some adverbs we put at the beginning of a sentence, but especially we don't put it there when it comes before the subject. For example, especially I like healthy food, such as salads. Okay, we don't say this. This is considered incorrect. So if you want to use especially at the beginning of a sentence, put it after the subject before the verb. I especially like healthy food. Another way that we sometimes use especially is in the negative, and the negative means not really. For example, storms in California are not especially common. So they're not really common. Or he didn't especially want to take a nap, but we finally persuaded him to do so. So he didn't really want to take a nap. Which one is more common? Not really or not especially? Not really, but you can hear not especially sometimes. Okay, so let's look more closely at how to use especially in a sentence, and I'll go through some various locations where you can put especially. First, you can put especially before an adjective. For example, many Americans are especially worried about gun violence. So this means that they're worried about some things, but especially more about gun violence. Or, I'm not especially good at singing. So I'm not really good at singing. Another place we can put it is before the verb. Children especially enjoy playing with stuffed animals. Or, I will especially remember our trip to Italy. So what does that mean? That means that I will remember many trips, but I will especially remember that trip to Italy. Okay, another place where we can put especially is before a prepositional phrase. For example, I made this bracelet especially for you. So that means that I made it just for you. Or, I listen to jazz all the time, especially in the morning. Okay, another place where we can put especially is before a noun. For example, a common challenge for English learners is writing, especially essays and reports. Okay, so that emphasizes that essays and reports are more challenging than others. I love healthy food, especially kale salad and chia pudding. So you may not be familiar with those foods, but those are sort of popular or well-known, very healthy foods in the United States. We also sometimes will put especially before a person's name. For example, everyone in my family is worried about inflation, especially Lisa. Or we could put it after the word family. Everyone in my family, especially Lisa, is worried about inflation. Another place where we can put especially is after a comma and before a clause. For example, occasionally I play the lottery, especially when the prize is very large. And finally, we can put especially at the beginning of a sentence. And remember that I told you not to do it when you put especially before the subject. But we can put it at the beginning of a sentence if it's before other words, like this. Especially at the beginning, the new employee needed extra help. Now in this case, we could move that and we could say, the new employee needed extra help, especially at the beginning. But both of them would be possible. Okay, finally, let's talk about the difference between especially and specially. This is a very commonly confused pair of words, and to be honest with you, it's kind of hard for me to even explain what the difference is. But I'm going to tell you two things. First of all, especially is used much more often than specially. So I would say probably if we look at 100 times when those words are used, maybe 99 or 98 of them would be especially. So if you're not sure, go with especially. Specially is a little bit different because it's also an adverb, but it's the adverb form of the word special. So for example, we could say, this kitchen was specially designed for this family's unique needs. Okay, so that means that the kitchen had a special design, a unique design, and we could use specially as the adverb instead of the adjective special. Or, the bride-to-be is having jewelry specially made for her wedding. So again, this would mean that the jewelry is special. So again, it's a little different from especially because special is really the adverb form of the word special. But remember that especially is much, much more common. So let's practice together. In the comments below, you can answer a couple of questions. So one of the questions could be, what parts of English are especially challenging for you? So you might think about different things in English that are challenging, but what is especially challenging? Extra challenging? Or tell me about food. What kind of foods do you especially like? For example, for me, I love Italian food, especially pasta and gelato. So I hope that this is helpful for you. Don't forget to give it a like if you enjoyed it and leave a comment. And I hope to see you back here next time. Take care.